Hetep, peace and blessings. Today is the conclusion of my three-part discourse on West African civilizations. In part 1 of the series, I dealt with the rise and fall of the Ghanaian Empire. In part 2, I dealt with the Mali Empire. And in this discourse, the third and final part, I will discuss on the rise and fall of the Songhay Empire. If you haven't seen part 1 and 2 of this series, I urge you to view them on my channel. The Songhay people were a nuclear group that were to build their name to the greatest African empire of the 15th and 16th century. They started off as a small state with their capital at Kukia, east of the Niger River between Gao and Agadez. Their earliest history can be traced back to the 7th century, but it was not until the 11th century under the rulership of King Kosoi that Songhay began their expansion. They captured the city-state of Gao from the Soko people and made it their new capital. The Songhay were a unique people who, as a whole, can be characterized as highly intelligent, industrious, and aggressively invincible as both traders and warriors. As mentioned in part 2 of this series, the Songhay kingdom became an essential part of the Mali Empire when Mansa Musa's commander captured Gao, the capital of Songhay. However, after the death of Mansa Musa and the subsequent waning of the Mali Empire, Songhay broke away from Mali's dominance, declaring Gao's independence in 1375 under the leadership of King Suleiman Ma. The growth of Songhay into an empire was steady after the declaration of independence, but it began to expand rapidly in all directions when Sunni Ali, perhaps the greatest Songhay emperor, assumed the throne in 1464. He became a Muslim for the same economic reason that influenced other African kings. The Muslims controlled trade not only in Asia and Europe, but also dominated trading activities in the towns and cities. The wealth of the nation depended very largely on the cooperation with the Muslims. The Songhay masters, on the other hand, were generally anti-Islam, and this was a major problem encountered by many African kings, to embrace Islam for the economic well-being of the nation without alienating the masses. But Sunni Ali was powerful and clever enough to play both roles. But eventually, and it became evident that Sunni Ali, even though he proclaimed himself to be a Muslim, his true loyalty was to the traditional religions of his people. Sunni Ali's reign was a prosperous one that lasted 35 years. Songhay developed from an independent state to a massive West African empire. Under his rule, Songhay captured Timbuktu from the declining Mali Empire, and also gained control over another intellectual capital, the state of Djenné. Djenné was a valuable prize to the Songhay Empire, since it was a prosperous trading center containing buildings of attractive design and surrounded by great beauty. It was also the home of advanced culture, being the seat of a noted university, which employed a staff of 1,000 teachers who gave courses and lectures and conducted researches on a variety of subjects. Their medical school trained physicians and surgeons of great skill. Among the difficult surgical operations performed by doctors in Djenné was the removal of cataracts from the human eye. When Sunni Ali died in 1492, he was succeeded by Muhammad Touré, who mounted the throne in 1493 and reigned for 35 years as well. Muhammad Touré pushed the frontiers of the Songhay Empire as far as Ségou in the west and the sub-Saharan regions of the northeast. His real triumph, however, was to endow Songhay with the administration system which marked advancement towards a truly centralized state. After his reign, the dominance of the Songhay Empire, and I could say in general, West African dominance, began to decline. This was mainly due to the constant invasions of the Moroccans, internal conflict and fight for power, and the increasing presence of European traders and Christian missionaries. By 1600, the Songhay Empire, and by extension West Africa, were no longer a dominant force in the world. This end of dominance marked the beginning of a very dark time in African history, namely the tragedy of the transatlantic slave trade and European colonization. So this brings us to the conclusion of this series on West African civilization. I intend to do some work on other smaller kingdoms of the African continent, so you can subscribe to my page and stay tuned for those. Also, before I close, I would like to give special thanks to the late great Chancellor Williams and his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. This book right here. I really urge you to get this book because Professor Williams, it was thought that Professor Williams, mortgaged his house to conduct this research, to create this book, to enlighten and teach his people. So I highly recommend you get this book. It was really inspirational for me. I got a lot of information from this book to do this project. So I'm really grateful for the work done by the late Professor Williams, and I really hope that our people take the initiative to study and research and continue these great works in bringing the knowledge of our history to, especially to our youths, because our young people today, we have low self-esteem. The young people of African descent have low self-esteem because in our school system, they always start our history with slavery and colonization, which is a wrong approach to really delving into African history. If we had to delve into African history and get a thorough understanding of how our people reached the height of civilization, were really advanced in their culture, we will really appreciate who we are because we have a legacy to uplift, a legacy to fulfill. So I really encourage you. I recommend this book and, do the research, study, be informed. That's the only way we can elevate as a people. That's the only way we can unite as a people. That's the only way we can love each other. Because there's too much division and hate amongst us because we are taught to hate ourselves. Because we are taught that we came from slaves, that we can't accomplish much. These three empires of West Africa were the greatest. Probably greater than many of the nations today. So again, I will continue to reiterate, please study our history from a non-biased point of view, in a matter of fact, and inform the youths so we can create a new generation of African people that can build what we once had in the past. Peace and blessings.